In 2021, this was the best consumer 3D printer money could buy. Today, it kind of looks like a science fair project. So here's the question nobody's asking. Can it actually get better from here? Because I think the answer is yes, just not in the way you're thinking. Oh, and stick around to the end, because we'll also be hearing hot takes from some of your favorite 3D printing creators, plus some insightful new voices that you should definitely be paying attention to. Let's get after it. Over the last few years, consumer 3D printing has undergone a quantum leap. It's gotten so much better that even saying so has kind of become a cliche.
Fast, easy.
They got so good.
A lot better.
More convenient or sophisticated.
But as with most cliches, it's true. It seems like every other week, something new and exciting is announced. And I don't know about all of you, but I'm completely overwhelmed with all the new printers coming to market. And it's literally my job to stay on top of all of it. But in this video, I want to ask another question. What happens next? Can we reasonably expect the next 5 years of consumer 3D printing to be as exciting as the last? Or are we approaching a sort of plateau, a hard limit of physics or market economics that will make subsequent generations of FDM 3D printers no more exciting or revolutionary than the latest iPhone or Samsung? But let's really briefly talk about where the industry is right now, because we are in the midst of another major shift, even if it's potentially the last one. You see, although the last few years have been dominated by the explosion of wasteful multicolor 3D printing, the tides have recently turned. Because by dramatically expanding the market, selling millions of low-cost multicolor 3D printers, venture-backed companies like Bambu Lab, Creality, and Anycubic have created an incredibly juicy and increasingly sophisticated market. You may disagree, but to me, when I see things like Michaels and Walmart carrying filament, it definitely seems like 3D printers have now moved out of the niche category that, say, DSLR cameras occupy, and have actually become a much more common household possession all over the world, more akin to, say, an action camera. This means that both the economies of scale and the buyer sophistication have moved way up, and people are demanding more. That means less purge waste, shorter print times, engineering-grade materials, and true multi-material 3D printing. That's why, for example, SnapMaker broke Kickstarter records with their U1 launch, and why brands like Sovel, FlashForge, and Prusa are inundated with more demand for these next-generation printers than they can currently handle. It's also why everyone in the industry, from established players to newcomers, are trying to find ways to differentiate themselves. If a 4-color, 300° C tool changer isn't enough for you, well, how about an 8-color one? Or one with a heated chamber? IDEX copy mode? No, wait, 4-way copy mode. And that, on one foot, is where we are today. Everyone is coming out with a tool or nozzle changer of some sort, and they're all trying to innovate in order to capture market share in one specific segment of that category or another. A huge part of this, of course, is because the space is literally flooded with investor capital ever since China declared 3D printing to be a strategic industry in 2015. I mean, I don't know if you guys follow Chinese language news sources, but the amounts being thrown around there are positively eye-watering. SnapMaker has just announced another successful round of financing, potentially bringing them over the $200 million mark if you include their Kickstarter backing. Elegoo has also raised another round last May, just 6 months after their bombshell investment from DJI, meaning they too have likely crossed the $100 million mark. And if that's what the market looks like on the top, then you can just imagine how many hundreds or even thousands of deals are happening in the startup ecosystem to try and find the next Bambu Lab, or SnapMaker, or Elegoo. Whether it's large companies like Aniso Print or Dreamy incubating their own teams, or startup founders raising capital for completely new ventures, this investment boom is behind the explosion of new names, particularly out of China. Each one of them is vying for a piece of the pie. Infomec, Toppy, FiberSeeker, Atomform. Need I go on? And that's just in FDM, or filament-based 3D printers for the layman among us. But there's a whole world of 3D printing far beyond spools of wound up plastic. And because of knowledge transfer, expiring patents, and genuine innovations, we're finally starting to see all of that trickle down into the consumer world, similar to how resin printing trickled down a decade ago. A prime example of this latest vanguard was the record-breaking UFimake E1 UV printer. But it's certainly not the last. This season alone, Kickstarter is absolutely flooded with new UV and even 3D UV printers from the likes of HeyGears, xTool, FlashForge, and Morpho. So it's not unreasonable to believe that in, say, a couple of years, we'll all be able to buy cheap, reliable desktop 3D UV printers that print in full color. But that's still just the tip of the iceberg, friends, because the list of exciting technologies that are no longer covered by patents is a truly rich one. For example, we still don't have consumer access to things like metal 3D printing or SLS powder-based machines, despite many of those patents expiring over 10 years ago. And while prices and machine sizes have already both shrunk down dramatically, we're still not anywhere near desktop levels. So I wouldn't be surprised to see more and more investors and companies trying to do for those two market segments what UFimake did for UV printing. And look, I get it. Unlike your basic FDM printers, most consumers will probably never actually need a metal 3D printer or a 5-axis CNC or an SLS nylon 3D printer, at least not frequently enough to actually buy one, even if they do become much more affordable. But fortunately, that doesn't really matter, because when you do need something manufactured in one of those technologies, you can simply order it from this video's sponsor, PCBWay. They've spent years and millions of dollars investing in the latest technologies and highly skilled engineers and operators to run them. All you need to do is upload your part, select your options, and request a quote. The parts arrive at your doorstep incredibly fast, and the quality is always top-notch. We'll leave a link in the description, and do make sure to add the coupon code PCBWay the next layer 10 to your account to get $10 off any order of $30 or more in the next 6 months. All right, back to the video. So, a pretty exciting time to be in 3D printing, right? I mean, between the hundreds of millions in VC funding, billions in revenue, numerous looming IPOs, and entire troves of patents expiring, the whole industry is a highly charged powder keg just waiting to explode even further. My question is, does it matter? Don't get me wrong, I am super excited about the half dozen or so machines that I'm scheduled to test before the end of the year. I'm just not sure that there are all that many more big, exciting innovations coming after them. On some level, today's 3D printers can already do most of the things that most people would want. I mean, functional and durable parts out of a wide range of materials, all that's been possible for the average person to print for years at this point. Multicolor printing. That's already gotten really good, especially in the last year. So where do we go from here? Sure, 6 months ago, myself and it seems many of the R&D departments in the industry would have said more colors. I mean, do you remember how excited people were about the Bondtech Index announcement? I saw so many comments in my feed like, I'm gonna stick 20 of them on my Sobel SV08 Max. But fast forward a year and change, and the need for more than, say, 6 nozzles has essentially been superseded by clever software. And just so I don't mince words here, yes, my hot take is that Full Spectrum and its variants are gonna continue to improve to the point where we'll no longer need or want 8, 12, or 24 color FDM printers. So, more capable engineering-grade filaments then, right? Well, I'm not sure. See, we already have tool changers hitting the market now that can print at a comfortable 320 degrees Celsius with a heated chamber, and that covers your PCCFs, your PPSCFs, and really pretty much every other consumer and prosumer filament that you'd ever reasonably buy. I mean, do we really think that the average consumer, or any consumer for that matter, is gonna print with PEEK, PEC, or Ultim if you give them the capability? Judging by how expensive those materials are, I'd be willing to bet not. Okay, 5-axis non-planar printing then. Well, here again, I'm not so sure. While it's theoretically very interesting and exciting to be able to overcome the anisotropic weaknesses of 3D printing, I'm not sure anyone actually needs that level of strength outside of heavy industry. Polymer science has just gotten so good, and desktop printers so capable, that I just don't see this moving the needle for consumers, especially if the software doesn't become dead simple to use. Not to mention the fact that other manufacturing technologies, from continuous fiber 3D printing to desktop CNC machining, are all rapidly becoming more and more accessible as alternatives when 3D printed plastic just isn't strong enough. So what now? I mean, those hundreds of millions of dollars coming in from investors aren't charity. They're investments, and they're obviously looking for a return. So where do they go? Well, first, let me tell you my predictions, and then we'll hear from some of your favorite 3D printing content creators on what they think happens next. For me, if I dust off my MBA hat and put it on for a minute, I think that the vast majority of this investment actually goes into marketing, distribution, infrastructure, and education. In addition to these brands spending many millions of dollars on digital marketing, we're already seeing pilot stores cropping up in Shenzhen, and I would not be surprised to see millions and millions of dollars being poured into flagship stores in major markets all over the world. What's more, I think a lot of that money will end up going towards scaling factories and production capacity to drive a classic race to the bottom on even the most cutting-edge technologies. We've seen it before in 3D printing, and we're already seeing upstart brands teasing things like $249 tool changers, and ultimately, I think it's not long until you and I can walk into a store and buy a $300 enclosed 4-tool-headed 3D printer that prints just great. And in order to drive that type of adoption, I'm pretty sure that these brands are going to be sinking even more millions into their software, their model repositories, and, lucky for me, user-generated content showing potential buyers what kind of projects they can actually do with these printers, so get subscribed. Now, I do think that we're going to continue to see a lot of innovation, for example, in the realm of non-3D printing toolheads, like the ones teased by Prusa at Formnext last year. Pick and place, wire routing, silicone mixing, laser etching, these are all great candidates for next-gen innovations, and if FDM technology itself hits a plateau, then this is one example of an area where the technology could go next, and one that would actually expand what your everyday person can make in their basement. Now, I have to say, love them or hate them, Prusa does have a history of predicting the future and being too early to the party. They did it with their multi-material system, and they did it again with the Prusa XL, and I honestly wouldn't be surprised if, in retrospect, we realize that they've done it again with this idea. But I want you to notice what I didn't predict. More advanced, innovative FDM hardware. No next-gen multi-material breakthrough like the Bambu Lab Vortec or the Mova Atom Form palette all promised to be. No massive shift in motion systems like the recent move to Core XY, which enables faster, higher quality 3D printing. Now, I'm no engineer, but I just don't see any room for another hardware breakthrough of that magnitude. At least not in FDM. I absolutely believe that we're poised to see some major shifts from industrial to prosumer and eventually consumer in the next 5 years. Whether that's, like I said, metal 3D printing, 3D UV printing, non-3D printing tools, or SLS powder 3D printing. Those spaces, I believe, are going to be the new hotbeds of innovation and competition. But pure FDM? I hate to say it, but I think we've just about reached the peak. The point where the technology has gotten so good and so mature that every subsequent generation will be a minor evolution, not a revolution. At some level, I believe that the well is just about run dry, that after 15 plus years of patents expiring, we've already got just about every major innovation that FDM will ever be able to offer, and it's packed into something as accessible as an $849 tool changer. And I came to this belief because, quite frankly, when I look at the leading industrial 3D printers, machines that cost upwards of $250,000, I just don't see that next big patented innovation that has yet to come to desktop 3D printing. I just see much bigger, much fancier, enterprise-grade versions of the same technology that you and I have access to. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't want any of this to sound pessimistic or to give you the impression that I'm not genuinely hopeful about the future of consumer 3D printing in general, or even FDM printing more specifically. I'm genuinely excited about all the innovations and improvements coming out right now, and we've been absolutely blessed in this hobby to get so much cool stuff in such a short span of time. That's ultimately a very good thing. I just don't think it's a repeatable thing. And I guess I want to temper expectations, both yours and my own. but I could certainly be wrong. I kind of hope that I'm wrong. So I went ahead and reached out to some of your favorite 3D printing experts and content creators, plus a few newer voices that I've found to be particularly prescient, just to get their hot takes. Here's what they had to say.
Hey, Jonathan, I don't think the wells run dry on 3D printing. More people are getting into 3D printing now because the machines are becoming easier to use and they're more affordable. Expanding the user base is bringing in new ideas and new ways to solve them. We're no longer just a bunch of nerds trying to make an Ender 3 run fast. The real innovation is coming from the software and from things like full spectrum and from the kinds of materials that we can print. When a resource like 3D printing becomes cheaper, people think of more ways to use it. And that's what we're experiencing in desktop FDM right now.
Hi, Jonathan. To answer your question, I don't think we're even close to the peak yet. There's really two kinds of companies. The ones that look at what their competitors are doing and react, and then the ones that look outside of their own industry for inspiration. Tool changers, nozzle changers, things like that weren't even invented for 3D printing. They were adapted from other industries. That's why I'm so optimistic. There's literally thousands of technologies evolving outside of desktop 3D printing, and eventually many of those ideas will make their way into our machines. It's that second type of company that's really pushing the industry forward by looking beyond 3D printing and figuring out how to bring those technologies into our world. Companies have to innovate to survive, and like it or not, with AI accelerated development, I think the pace of innovation is only going to increase.
Hey Jonathan, thanks for including me in the video. Hardware-wise, I think we're pretty much at peak. But when it comes to sensors and cameras already built into our FDM 3D printers, I see a lot of potential for new, better software to take these signals and improve calibration, print quality, and maybe even strength of 3D printed parts. I'm personally also highly looking forward to other manufacturing methods becoming available to us hobbyists.
I don't think that FDM innovation is over. Traditional single nozzle FDM is getting close to its practical speed limits, but not temperature limits. Big challenge now is the multicolor printing without waste. The direction is not clear yet. We can see tool changers, hot end changers. And I think filaments will continue to improve significantly. Even now we can see PPA, PPS, CF, which we can print on desktop consumer printers, which was impossible 3-4 years ago. Another important area of innovation will be AI-based 3D model generation. It is still in early stage, but it's improving significantly. However, FDM technology has fundamental limitations, and for the long-term future, I expect more progress from the technologies that can process the complete layer at once, like MSLA, DLP, but those technologies must be much simpler for the use.
Have we hit the peak of 3D printing innovation? I don't really think so. Things have seemed to be slowing down the last few years, but then every year something else came to the market. Years ago, nobody really talked about tool changers, and now it's the really big thing. I think we might have kind of hit a peak in hardware 3D printing innovation. Of course, there are always things that you can improve. But one thing I think innovation's gonna be really interesting is not in terms of hardware, but in software. For many years, we've been talking about non-planar slicing. I think software is gonna be the really cool thing where we can see new stuff in the near future.
But now that we've heard from some of my peers and industry leaders, I also want to hear from all of you. What's your take? Do you think that there are still untapped frontiers of innovation in FDM 3D printing? Or have we pretty much reached the peak? I'd love to hear all about it in the comments below. And while you're down there, if you're interested in the future of 3D printing, about 70% of you somehow still aren't subscribed. And I can tell you that I've got something like 7 new machines of various types on their way to me for our next few videos. So I can't tell you anything about them just yet, but I can tell you that you definitely aren't going to want to miss them. In the meantime, let me go ahead and link you to a recent video that I did about practical uses for multi-material 3D printing, from the everyday and mundane to the theoretical and cutting edge. I don't want to brag, but Linus from LTT did recently call it a great video, so I'm not freaking out or anything. That's all for this week, but I'll see all of you on the next layer.